Hey, what's going on, Los Angeles? Welcome to the Rams Skinny here on the LAFB network. We are Los Angeles Sports, recapping a not so pretty game loss. Rams to the Dolphins, 23-15. We are recording this later than usual because their performance was so bad. I got sick from it. No, not really, but I was at SoFi. Great atmosphere. It was great to be. I hadn't been at SoFi yet this year, Skinny. So it was great to be back at SoFi, see all the fans, but ended up getting sick the next day. So on Tuesday and just didn't have the I guess the voice to really record. So that's why we're a little late, but yeah, we'll get into it. And then obviously quick turnaround, do our preview here just a little bit later as they face the Patriots and hopefully get back on track. But first and foremost, Skinny, how are you doing after that bleak and depressing performance?
Well, I had to move on pretty quickly, just like both McVay and Stafford said they had to do, because I got family coming into town. I got a couple of days off from LAFB, so I got mom and her husband and sister and brother-in-law and nephew all descending on my house to first time in LA, first time on a plane for my nephew actually. So pretty cool.
Wow. Wait,
Yeah.
first time in LA, your whole family or just the nephew?
First time for my sister and my nephew. I've been here 6 years now. He's 9, so it's
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's
Wow.
first time that everybody's come out here. And originally we were supposed to go to the USC Trojans and Nebraska game. They all live in Nebraska. A couple of them in Lincoln, and then in Kearney, Nebraska. But they decided they didn't want to go because Nebraska stinks sometimes, and they don't want to watch them lose and pay for the honor. But
yeah, all right. Well, you can watch at a bar. So I got to ask before we get into this, like, what's the first place you're going to take them? Is it going to be like a restaurant you got to show them? Is there a site you got to show them in LA? What's the first place you're taking them?
That's a great question. There's a couple of new places that have opened up in my neighborhood. I love the Greyhound here in my neighborhood. A nice little sports bar there. So it's always a little different when you're planning with a kid, though. You can't go everywhere. You can't go to the fancy restaurants. You gotta kind of keep it down home. But I'm always excited to show anybody my neighborhood just because I love it so much. And my house is great too. So just maybe hanging out in the backyard.
Yeah. Can't beat that. The weather right now, I'm there. I don't know what it is in Nebraska, but in Colorado, it snowed 2 feet over the weekend. So I'm sure that means it's cold in Nebraska. I know they're obviously neighboring states. So, getting out here to chilly 65-degree LA, I'm sure they're going to look forward to. So, well, good. Well, welcome to the to your family, and excited to, I'm sure maybe I'll be able to see some of them as well. Hopefully, if I'm feeling better. I don't want to get anyone sick on vacation. So we shall see. But speaking of sick, as we alluded to, Rams, just a bad game. 23-15 offense could get nothing going. Bad at math, but 5 field goals, no touchdowns in that game. I mean, 5 field goals. How many times have we talked about this red zone offense? You score even 1 touchdown, the Rams either going to overtime or winning this game, and unable to do so. So I'll toss it. Well, before I toss it to you, show is always brought to you by our friends at BetOnline. Head to betonline.ag. All the best betting lines, money lines, spreads you can find on any sport out there. College football, pro football, Rams, Chargers, USC, UCLA. It's all found at betonline.ag. Tell them the guys at the LAFB network sent you. So with that, I'll just toss it to you, kind of as we always do, your kind of overall thoughts from just we were saying poor. I mean, the defense actually played pretty well, pretty remarkable actually throughout the game. I know they ended up giving up 23 points, but pressure was there. Jared Verse, another staple game for his Rookie of the Year campaign. The secondary, I thought overall played good, but it was just a brutal offensive game, even play calling game from Sean McVay. Just really nothing good to say about the offense, but I'll toss it to you first.
Yeah, it was like all the things that could go wrong went wrong, and they just could not find it within themselves to pull themselves out of that hole. We've harped on McVay over and over again for not, giving up on the run. Continuing to pass the ball, 18 runs in this game. Kyren Williams, still one of the best offensive weapons, most consistent offensive weapon by far so far this year. I thought the way this game played out is what I thought how the Minnesota Vikings game was going to play out. Mm-hmm. And Miami Dolphins come out of nowhere, put up a fantastic defensive performance throughout this game, really limit what they can do through the air and, get a lot of pressure, a lot of simulated pressure, kind of like what, the Vikings do. Really good coverage. They have a much better secondary, but the amount of pressure that they were able to get on this team, which we'll get into this offensive line, which is the talk of the town, was just incredible. And they just could not find a rhythm. The Rams get down 10 points and McVay just turtles. He just goes back to all those bad tendencies, draw plays on third down. And I know a lot of mistakes were made and the score should have been higher than this, but you have to have a second plan. You have to have a contingency plan for when things don't go your way right away. And it just seems like that, that's just kind of one of those McVay staples is he I haven't brought this up in a while, but he had that long streak of winning or putting himself up offensively in games, running up the score and winning all these games that he leads at halftime with it. Well, the inverse of that is, of course, when he's down, the comebacks aren't happening, even with the comeback king, Matthew Stafford. So yeah, I mean, so many interesting takeaways. Learned so much about this team. They were flying high and they come crashing down to earth, and all of the weaknesses were exposed. And I thought Sean McVay's post-game press conference was really telling. He was really frustrated, and for the first time, he didn't kind of put it all on himself. He was saying, he was still saying we have to take care of these things. We have to put our guys in good positions. But he almost called the offensive line play not good. Wow. He almost called that. He almost got there. Yeah. Adam Grossbard for the OC Register asked him the question, what do you think of the offensive line play? And he says, well, I got to look at the tape. Yeah. He said that he called out the offense for being inconsistent. So, these are things that we haven't seen from McVay in the past. And Steve Avila's post-game press conference in the locker room, he said that one of the takeaways was Sean McVay does not want to sound like a broken record any longer. So he's really getting frustrated with this team, and I don't blame him. This wasn't his best game either, but you got to execute in the red zone when you get there. You put all that work in effort getting down there. You saw Deebo Samuel, every Rams fan's favorite player, of course. Mm-hmm. He lost it because they were missing field goals. And when guys play with that kind of emotion, that refocuses thing. And there was certainly emotion there, but where's the leadership coming from? Where's the guy, grabbing the face mask of the guy saying, get your head in the game, that sort of thing. That's not really the MO of this team, but I've kind of rambled on here for a long time.
No, all great points. And yeah, like where's the, maybe not even so much leadership, but just accountability coming from of like, how do these things get fixed? You don't want to sound like a broken record, but they are a broken record because it's the same thing. Even in the wins, some of these things still glare up and they're able to overcome them and get wins, which I think comes from a place of having some good key players and good coaches overall, but it's still not a well-maintained full unit, full 4 quarters of play that we've really seen outside of maybe a handful of situations here and there. And I mean, this brings me back to that Chicago loss, a game that this team just should have won. Not saying they outplayed the Dolphins, but they are a better football team right now. The defense did enough for them to win this game. Obviously gave up some key plays there at the end, unfortunately, but did enough that this offense, I mean, you score 1 touchdown, you're probably winning this game, or at least like making it an overtime consideration. 1 touchdown of 5 red zone appearances. And could not get it done. And the play call in the red zone again was interesting, but the execution was worse. And so we can sit here all day and blame Sean McVay in the play calling, which he absolutely deserves a piece of the pie. But there were moments, and I need to watch more of the tape again, because it's always different watching like in the stadium. And I'm in where my buddies' seats are. They're great seats, but they're behind what would that be, the south end zone. So when they're coming into that end zone, you get a great view. When on the other side, you really don't get a good view. So I need to see some of it, but there was definitely plays where either Stafford didn't throw to the open guy, there was missed blocks, there was misassignments, things like that, where you're just not executing regardless of the play call. And, that's been the larger issue this year. And I think the larger issue for this team going forward is how do they correct those and overcome, some situations that they just haven't been able to overcome. And that'll get us to now this kind of next topic of this offensive line skinny. We said before that we didn't know if it would even be wise putting both Jonah Jackson and Steve Avila back after missing so much time, and with how well Bo Limmer and Justin Dedich had played. Obviously, they were not, fantastic. I think Bo Limmer played really well. Justin Dedich played good enough. So I'm not saying that it wasn't supposedly going to be an upgrade, but when you have two guys playing such important positions, you're taking that risk of that, not only there being rusts, but there's, a lot of things throughout the season that's changing. I've talked about the offensive line is like a chain link fence. Like, you're only as strong as your weakest link. And if you're not all working together in unison, you're going to be exposed. Well, we saw that in spades on Monday night, because Steve Avila, I thought, played much better. Jonah Jackson played really bad. We'll be a little nicer that he did not play well. And would it have been maybe wiser to keep Bo Limmer in there with Steve Avila? I'm not the coach. That's not my decision. They know how well they're progressing. But I don't think it would have been any worse with Bo Limmer in there. And unfortunately, you don't want to call these contracts so bad halfway through one season, but this Jonah Jackson contract's looking to be very bad so far. Obviously only played the one game and then been hurt and then now been back and didn't look good. So there's a lot of questions that need to be answered on the offensive line. You're not going to win many football games with your line playing like they did. And then on the counter of that, and I'll toss back to you, and we talked about this after the Lions game, this exact same thing. When you're throwing in new linemen, and yes, these are your starters, but they're new because they haven't played for 7 weeks. Why are you not running the football more to take the pressure off of these new linemen? You're throwing the ball 46 times in a one-score game, almost the entire game. What was it, 10-3 or 10-0 at halftime was like the biggest deficit, 10 points?
It was 10-6 at halftime.
Yeah, there you go. And you're throwing the ball 46 times, telling the defense, just send blitz pressure because we're not going to run it. We're just going to throw it. I've said many times, and I get passionate about this, like, even if the run is not seen as successful, like, you're not getting more than 4 yards of carry. I think most people would agree, like, anything over 4 yards of carry is successful. Anything under is not successful, even though technically 3.5 yards, if you do it 3 times, you get a first down, but we'll leave that there. So 4 yards, even if it's not successful, you're keeping the defense honest. You're forcing the defense to tackle. You're forcing the defense to play physical, and you're forcing them to make a play every single time you snap the ball. When you throw it 46 times, and let me see, I have it here in front of me, and of those 46, 16 incompletions, that's 16 plays the defense didn't have to do anything. Now, granted, I'm sure some of those incompletions the defense caused, but you get where I'm getting with this. And when you run the ball, not only you're forcing the defense to do this, but you're taking some of the pressure on your linemen that have missed 7 weeks that are just finally back to not let the defensive line and front seven pin their ears back and just get after your quarterback. So as bad as the offensive line was, the play calling certainly did not aid them in their efforts to get back in the swing of things. Your thoughts on the O-line?
Yeah, I've got a really bad taste in my mouth, just how it's all transpired since the signing happened. Out at training camp, it was always they were going to move Steve Avila from guard to center, and he played that through most of training camp up until 2 weeks when all of a sudden they switch it. Now, I don't know if that, Jonah Jackson's natural position, the position he's played the entire time he's been in the pros, I don't think he's really moved outside of the position as left guard, even since college. Avila's played center, but it's a different, every quarterback is different. Every offense is different with their center. The responsibilities are different. They move him back 2 weeks before the season, and then they get hurt. You're looking at just a handful of practices that they've been able to, try to get Jonah Jackson acclimated to a very different position. Center is very different.
Yeah.
And, it resulted in a high snap. Goes over, in the red zone, really close to the end zone. I don't remember exactly what the yard line was, but they were knocking on the door there. Goes over Stafford's head. He tries to make a play. Big loss, field goal. So how quickly can they get things up to speed. More bad news for the Rams. It's unlikely that Rob Havenstein is going to return for this week, so we're going to be looking for a Joe Noteboom or Warren McClendon. Joe Noteboom also not practicing again.
Not even bring him up. I mean, he was not good.
Yeah, he was the weakest. He was by far the weakest link. But just the process. They think in bets. I like to bring that up because they bet big. They say Steve Avila can play center in the NFL, and they don't realize that day 2 of training camp in OTAs. They don't realize that they wait all the way up, and can we get Jonah Jackson some practice before we throw him in there? Even just letting him ride through. Bo Limmer's been playing great. Let him ride through 21 days before they activate him. Get him, 9 practices, 9 more practices on top of the, handful that he had before. Yeah. That's better. So, yeah, I mean, and to your point about the running the ball, like I was saying, Kyren Williams is still good. He's still been good without these guys in there.
Really good.
Yeah. And he had 4 yards of carry in this game again. And so, yeah, it's across the board. It's frustrating. And, the thing that I'll put on McVay is he brought in Mike LaFleur to help him beat the too high defenses that have given him fits. And, for years, they lost the Super Bowl. They get beat by Chicago and Denver, I think also, with a too high defense. And, he's white knuckling the play calling. And, I mean, that's his prerogative but he's losing games because of it. The post-game press conference, Matthew Stafford said it, a couple of times that they sim pressures. We didn't know where it was coming from. Too high safeties. Is that all that it takes to beat these guys? Yeah. And you need athletes to have those sim pressures. You can't just run that with, just anybody at linebacker or, these guys got to be able to drop back into coverage. So not every team is going to be able to do it. But when they can, and the Dolphins completely changed. They're usually a pretty blitz heavy team. They scaled their blitzes way back, like almost half as many. So
yeah,
they saw what was coming. They knew, and this is not a good defensive team. So it's frustrating. And going back to that McVay press conference, probably the harshest criticism he had is that the offense wasn't finding any semblance of identity, which comes from the coach. I mean, you're part of that, man.
You create the identity.
Yeah.
Like that, just kind of not soul because you're the head coach, but as the offensive play caller, like that's what you do.
Yeah, and I'm hoping to. We'll never hear about this, but I'm hoping that there is some pushback in that building from either LaFleur, and I'm kind of pointing my finger at Stafford now too. It's like, he knows how to run offenses. He knows how to be a gunslinger, and we'll never hear about it, but I hope he's in the office saying, "Man, we gotta figure some of this stuff out and have some ideas, put forward, and just rather than just running with the play call."
Yeah. Well, and this is like kind of the first time, like we've, again, I never want to be someone that's like patting ourselves on the back, but this is the first time I've heard the fan base kind of echo what we've been saying for a long time when it pertains to the tight end position and kind of what is needed out of that position, specifically in the red zone to, if they're going to throw the ball. I know Tyler Higbee in years past isn't like the dominant Travis Kelce or, any of those go down the list, but he was certainly a red zone threat, whether he actually was catching the ball or at least as a decoy. And Colby Parkinson just hasn't been that. And again, he was signed, even if they say not, like you can't, with a football brain as smart as both McVay and Snead are, can't deny that he was signed because of his blocking prowess as a tight end, not as a receiving threat. And unfortunately, they've had to use him in that way, but they knew that. They knew Higbee was going to be gone for seemingly almost the entire regular season. So whether Davis Allen and Hunter Long just haven't developed and progressed like they hoped, and that's the reason? Or they were just, and I'm feeling like I'm getting harsh on this one, or they were just too blind by their own genius, thinking they could kind of make Parkinson into this pseudo Tyler Higbee like tight end. And this is the first time I've heard the fan base really like call that out now, finally saying like, man, Parkinson, that signing also does not look good because he just hasn't been. Now, the signing wasn't made for him to be this. The signing was made for this to be a run-heavy football team with this offensive line and him being that sixth offensive lineman that could catch passes if needed. I mean, he had, 21 catches last year? He's not a 50-catch tight end.
Yeah, no, I think his top, yardage was like 350 or something that to that effect.
Yeah, so that's just another one where miscalculation. Again, what's lucky and as frustrating as this game was, I mean, everything's still in front of this team. I mean, they're at 4-5, but the division's still wide open, plenty of football. So this isn't like the season's over kind of thing. But these are things that have been rearing their heads since training camp. Even in the wins all season, it's stuff that's been these issues, and they're still not figured out. And when you lose like that to that team at home, it just looks way worse than maybe it does in the wins. But this has been an issue since week 1, since training camp. They just, in their 4 wins, have kind of got away with it. And so, it's unfortunate. They can correct it. I mean, as harsh as we're being on McVay, he's still a very capable coach. He's still one of the top coaches in the NFL. So I think it's when you see a problem like this, it's one that you think can get corrected because of the brass, because of the history of this organization, because of some of the leadership. But until we see it, like, we're going to call it out because it's been this way for now, 9 games. And how they fix it. And they have another inferior, in my opinion, opponent coming up. And so how do they play against them and how do they game plan? Because here's a, I'm going to get kind of way off script here, but here's a team in the Patriots. And Shane Waldron is not Sean McVay, but he comes from the McVay tree. And the Bears offense has been pitiful this year with Caleb Williams and Shane Waldron with his play calling. That Patriots defense completely shut down the Bears offense to the tune of 3 points. And the Bears offense have struggled all season long. You don't think the Patriots defense is going to be able to do something against this iteration of Sean McVay's Rams offense that run very similar systems? Again, Shane Waldron is not Sean McVay, but it's a similar system. They're going to know what they want to do against Matthew Stafford and company because they just did it last week. And so it's going to be a big reckoning of how this offense can flip the script and turn the narrative into being back to that dynamic offense that has versatility, that has more options than just airing it out 45 plus times. So, and that is successful in the red zone, which is obviously the most important and has been the biggest issue this season. So I don't really have a question. That was just another long rant.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, it's time for the ranting, and I'm not going to let the defense off the hook. I know they had a good first half. So looking at it from EPA per play, they were the 3rd best defense in the first half. In the second half, they were the 23rd defense. Now I'm looking at the secondary. The secondary was doing a fantastic job of making Tua hang on to the ball for a long time and letting that pressure get there. The second half, that all fell off. But also Verse, he had 4 pressures in the first half. And the rest of the game, he just had 1. So, it's, this is another question. This is what we were talking about when we were, wondering what the plan was up front, relying on so many young players. And I go back to leadership on this one. When things aren't going your way, who's the guy that's, in that defense that's rallying the guys, that's encouraging the guys, that's, telling them that we're going to get this one again. We just got the turnover and they turned it back over. And now we're back out here. Who's the guy that's like rallying these troops? And I think they have some loud voices out there, but there's nothing better than somebody that's been doing it and has been in this position before and either calms them or hypes them up or what have you. And you talk about the mistakes that cost this team points. A couple of them came from the defense, and I'm looking at Bobby Brown for headbutting inexplicably, losing 15 yards for no good reason. That Liam Eichenberg probably got an Oscar for that fall that he took after that. But you can't retaliate. This comes a week after Puka Nacua gets ejected for throwing a punch. Now, whether you agree with the call or not, you can't. This is not a team. This is not the Raiders. This is not a team of bullies and a-holes. This is supposed to be a well-honed professional organization. And the other penalty I'm going to go to is on the turnover. Braden Fisk with a block in the back takes the ball from within the 10-yard line all the way back out to the 43-yard line. So the Bobby Brown one was less about points, but more about just kind of like keeping composure. And the Fisk one though was he just he really took his team out of position there. And if hopefully there's some push-ups or running laps or something like that, something in maybe a fine, I don't know, but that's just the kind of mistake that you can't make. You just make a huge game-changing play, and you cost your team 30 some yards. That's a rookie mistake. That's what's going to happen with these young guys from time to time. They've been fantastic. I'm not taking anything away from them, but you felt the difference between the first half and the second half. And on third down in particular, they were 27th among 28 teams. There were only 28 teams that played. Third down, they were it's like it's all these veteran things where it's like this is the time that we got to get home. This is the time when we got to stop this play, things like that. So, I'm just piling on at this point, but it's a statistic that has to be thrown out there that they really fell apart and allowed Miami to get back into that game. I think a couple of weeks ago, Seattle tried to give them, that game, and they were able to come out with a win. The Miami Dolphins offensive line is not the Seattle offensive line. They couldn't just tee off on Tua like they did with Geno. And, it's a learning opportunity for the defense. And they're definitely going over that second half tape and those third downs. That's for sure. Miami didn't run once on third down in the second half. It was all passes.
Yeah. And they had success, which the Rams were not able to do on offense. And part of that success, and this is the last thing I'll harp about, maybe just of the show too, last thing I'll harp about tight end though, is part of that success is because obviously when you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, but they went and signed this offseason a tight end by the name of Jonnu Smith, who is a receiving tight end. Now, he only had 3 catches for 45 yards in this game, but if I'm not mistaken, all 3 of those were pretty big catches. I don't know if all 3 were on third down conversions, but they were all pretty meaningful catches. And when you look at it, and again, this is why I bring it up, because Colby Parkinson is not a bad player. He's just not meant to be a receiving threat tight end. So last thing, Skinny, I'll say. Colby Parkinson has more targets already this year than he's ever had in a season his entire career, with 36 targets through 9 games. Had 34 total targets last year in 17 games. Jonnu Smith, who Miami signed for 2 years, $10 million. Colby Parkinson got 3 years, $23 million or something like that. Jonnu Smith last season with Atlanta had 70 targets. 70 targets just last year. 50 of those for receptions. Higbee's not going to be back. You need some dynamic tight end in the passing game. Someone like Jonnu, I could go down the list of other free agent tight ends, but was out there and available for cheaper. You decide to go with the more rushing savvy, run blocking savvy, which is fine if that's your decision because you want to establish the run. But then seemingly every other week, you run for under 20 attempts and you throw it 45 times.
Well, and to your point, it goes back to the team building and the kind of this team gets so much praise for their ability to draft and team build through that and finding guys in the 5th, 6th, 7th rounds, all that good stuff, which is absolutely true. And then, but you look at we go back to the identity. What was this team supposed to be? Well, coming out of last year, man, that running game looked dominant.
Yeah.
How
many times last year, Skinny, did we say this is no more glitz and glam? This is a bring your lunch pill to work team. They reverted back.
I've already said this, but you go get LaFleur. starting to change the run game. We're building out a front that's going to protect Stafford and open up the running game even more. We don't have to just go right; we can go left now too. And just kind of the decisions that have gone into that, and the fact that they just, when you pick an identity, stick to the identity, whether or not Jonah Jackson's in there or not. Stick to the identity, whether he's playing center or not. You got to stick to your identity because that's what you built this team to do. You bring in Colby Parkinson because you're going to run more 12 personnel. You're going to have Davis Allen and Colby Parkinson on the field at the same time. That's the idea, to get, to open up even more running lanes. And, I understand that, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth, but you stick to your identity. You don't just try to go like this team is not built currently to execute that, 11 personnel 2018 team. This is the new Rams. This isn't the Todd Gurley Rams. This is the Kyren Williams Rams, and he wants to battering ram his way through the line. He's not, catching more passes. I wrote a big long article on something that we touched on last time, which was how much they're relying on him in the passing game. So I was keeping an eye on the numbers with how much he was being used as a pass blocker and pass protection. First half, 2 times. Second half, 10 reps. Mm-hmm. He leads the league by a big margin for running backs and pass protection, and that takes him out of the passing game. And that, there's a whole other discussion there, but Colby Parkinson essentially benched in this game, only 11 offensive reps for him. So, things are shifting, and I don't know if things are shifting in the right direction. I mean, the offensive line can really only go up from here. I'm questioning, that's the big question. Should they just put Bo Limmer back in there and see if Jackson can actually play center? Because we have no proof that he can. One of the most costly mistakes in the game, because he had to do what a center does, and he flipped it up over Stafford's head.
Yeah, 100%. And okay, we'll end with this because then we'll do our preview later. But do you think Bo Limmer gets to start next week? Do you think he'll be back, or that just shatter Jonah Jackson's confidence?
I think there's a good chance of it. I mean, you got to try. I think you got to. I'm sure they're repping it right now in practice. I think you got to see that. I would like to see that.
Well, that's what comes with we mentioned earlier, the accountability, right? Like, these are guys, professionals making a lot of money. But if you're a sole cause potentially for a loss, and there's a guy behind you that played really well in your stead, hold him accountable.
There's an economic principle called sunk cost fallacy.
Nice.
Whereas if we've invested a lot of ourselves or our money or our time, effort, whatever, into something, we feel like we have to continue to stick to it, and it's a fallacy. We don't. Sometimes you just cut it off and you start over, or you pick a better option, or you pivot and move on to something else.
Yeah. Which the Rams, as their organization, have proven that theory many times. How many times did they just sunk and said, "Okay, we'll just move on and eat the dead money"?
Well, it's one of the funny things is that we were talking about Joe Noteboom before we got on, like sunk cost fallacy there. Like they should have eaten some contracts long ago on him, and they just can't quit him.
Yeah. So, and he's, as you mentioned, hurt again somehow. Didn't play well and got hurt. And it's looking like, I mean, at this point, you got to at least, regardless if he ends up being healthy, I think you got to put McClendon out at right tackle if Havenstein can't go, which it looks like he can't at this point on Wednesday. I think you put McClendon out at right, and then you probably put Bo Limmer back at center. Avila, I think, played well enough that he's going to get better. He showed some rust there, but I think he wasn't like, the problem, and you roll with that and see where you go from there when Havenstein's back. And I mean, because this offensive line, again, they played fairly well with Dedich and Bo Limmer, with obviously Havenstein and Jackson as the anchors, and Dotson's obviously been healthy and good all year at right guard. So who's to say when Havenstein's back with Limmer at center, this is actually a pretty good unit with Avila back to full strength. So you hope Jackson can turn it around, because obviously he's shown some good things with Detroit. They paid him a bunch of money. But through 2 games, a game and a half, 6 quarters, whatever it's been, hasn't been great. So anything else you want to add before we sign out of here? Any positive stuff?
No, I'm excited to. Stat sheet looks good for the Rams. Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp actually ended up having really good positive days together. I think 80 and 98 yards respectively. Lots of targets for those guys. So the offense is still there. You gotta score touchdowns, and McVay has to stay aggressive, even if you're down a couple of scores. You got dudes, and you have to be able to put pressure. You have to be able to be willing to put the pressure on those guys to just say, like, hey, like, listen, this is the play. Go out there and execute. This is on you. This is on, like, and guys rise to the occasion. Cooper Kupp does that all the time. Puka Nacua has proved he's done it as well. Matthew Stafford, like, these are guys that have proven that, like, you put the game on them, they can make it happen. And yeah, so
yeah, I mean, how great was that one-handed snag on the sideline from Cooper Kupp? That was fantastic. Showing out again. So any more of that? Yeah. All right. Well, we'll be back for the preview. Sorry for the little more doom and gloom, but it was a bad game. I think everyone agrees, and I think this team can turn it around. They get a bad Patriots team, but they got to travel across the country. It's a 10 a.m. start. This team typically has not played well in the early window. So let's see if they can turn that around up in Foxborough on Sunday. So we will certainly talk about that later in the week. Thank you, as always, guys, for hanging out with us, Ramley. It was great to be at SoFi on Monday night. We haven't really talked skinny, but my buddy's tickets, season tickets in the lower bowl, which is always like incredible being that low. And he's right behind, or right in front of, I should say, a suite. I have no idea who owns this suite, which is actually only like 5 suites away from LeBron James's suite. So it's all LeBron James. But whoever owns this suite is highly connected, because the celebrity foot traffic, and there's that annoying thumbs up, the celebrity foot traffic that came through this thing was incredible. I mean, that thing was packed the whole time. People coming in and out. Lamar Odom was there. Lakers Hall of Famer Michael Cooper was in there. Bobby Valentine, MLB managing great, was in there randomly. It was a very random group too. Gunna, which I have no idea who that is, but apparently is a famous rapper. He was in there. There was many more that I recognized and just didn't know who they were, but I for sure was like, I've seen you before. But yeah, only in LA at a Rams game are you seeing that kind of directly behind me. That kind of celebrity foot traffic is pretty crazy.
It's one of the things I still get giddy about living in LA when I see somebody like, what's Frodo's name? The actor,
Elijah Wood.
I was just thinking of Elijah Craig. It's not 5:00 yet. But,
it is somewhere.
Yeah, he lives right around the corner, so I see him like constantly.
Do you call him like my precious when you see him?
No, I don't.
He probably gets so annoyed with stuff like that.
I'm sure he does.
When you're a character in one of those like trilogies or fantasy movies, or just like you're known for like one role, like he's been in a lot of movies, but he's obviously known as Frodo. He probably gets so old because that's all anyone ever says to you, I bet.
Yeah, absolutely. And I knew his character's name before I could remember his actual name. So.
Yeah, there you go. Whereas like you think of like Tom Cruise, Tom Hanks, Vince Vaughn, like they've been in so many roles that it's like they're not tied to one. They have like some of their bigger ones, but yeah, when you're someone like him, where it's like you're Frodo, that's who you are.
I mean, that's paying the bills, so you can't be too mad about it.
Right, he better not be. Yeah. He better not be. I'll be Frodo for the rest of my life for that kind of a paycheck, those residuals.
Yeah, one day I'll strike up a conversation with him.
Yeah, talk sports. Baby, he's a big football fan. Don't even bring up Frodo. Just
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah. So anyway, well, thank you all for hanging out. If you haven't already, head to our Rams LAFB YouTube page, hit that subscribe button. We would certainly appreciate that. Wherever you get your podcast, just search Ram Skinny, and everything, all of our content, video, audio, digital, editorial, can be found at LAFBnetwork.com. For Skinny T, I'm Ryan Darrett. Everyone have a good week. We'll be back later to preview Rams Patriots. Rams will get back on track. Confident. Let's get back to 500 next week. We'll talk more positive then. Thank you all. Be well, be safe. Talk to you soon.